There are 41 people on federal death row. Kenneth Lee, Maryland, 18 years on death row. On November 10, 2005, a federal jury in Maryland recommended that Lee be executed for the 2001 kidnapping and murder of Eric Hayes, a suspected PCP dealer and the son of a lieutenant in the DC Police Department. The murder was carried out in Maryland, but the kidnapping took place in Washington, D.C. James Flood, a co-defendant, was also found guilty but is expected to serve a life sentence. Lorenzo Wilson, the third defendant, was found guilty of plotting to kidnap and now faces a life sentence as well. Ronald Mikos, Illinois, 18 years on death row. A jury on May 23, 2005, recommended that the 56-year-old Chicago podiatrist be executed for the shooting murder of Joyce Brennan, a former patient, in order to keep her from testifying in a federal investigation into a Medicare fraud scheme in January 2002. A jury's recommendation for life without parole or death is legally binding on the judge in the federal system. James Rowan Jr., Virginia, 30 years on death row. Richard Tipton, Virginia, 30 years on death row. Tipton, Rowan, and Corey Johnson, their fellow defendant, belonged to an inner-city gang in Richmond, Virginia. In February 1993, they received a death sentence for their roles in many drug-related killings. The three co-defendants had scheduled execution dates for May 2006. Due to an issue with the lethal injection procedure, the executions were postponed. Johnson was put to death on January 14, 2021. Julius Robinson, Texas, 21 years on death row. On March 18, 2002, Robinson was given the death penalty for the 1999 Fort Worth, Texas killings of Rudolph Resendez in June and Juan Reyes in May. Incidents involving drugs claimed the lives of both men. On June 5, 2002, Robinson received a formal sentence from the trial judge. Dylann Roof, South Carolina, 6 years on death row. On January 10, 2017, a jury found Roof guilty of the racial killings of 9 parishioners at a historic black church in Charleston, South Carolina, and sentenced him to death. On January 11, the death penalty was formally imposed by the court. David Runyon, Virginia, 14 years on death row. A Norfolk, Virginia jury on August 27, 2009 unanimously recommended that Runyon be executed for the 2007 murder of naval officer Corey Allen Voss in Newport News. Former soldier Runyon was found guilty of shooting Voss as part of a murder-for-hire scheme orchestrated by Katerina Voss, Voss's wife, and Michael Draven, Katerina's boyfriend. The other 2 defendants were not prosecuted by the federal authorities to get the death penalty. After admitting guilt, Katerina Voss was given a life sentence. After being proven guilty, Draven also got a life sentence. Katerina hoped to benefit from $500,000 life insurance policy, so she hired Runyon to assassinate her husband. Ricardo Sanchez Jr., Florida, 14 years on death row. Daniel Troya, Florida, 14 years on death row. A West Palm Beach, Florida jury on March 31, 2009 recommended Troya and Sanchez get the death penalty for the 2006 murders of 2 children on the Florida Turnpike. In addition, they were found guilty of killing the parents of the children and were given life terms for that act. Every victim was of Hispanic descent. It is believed that the children's father was murdered due to a drug debt. The alleged drug operation leader was spared the death penalty. Troya and Sanchez received formal death sentences on May 13, 2009. Thomas Sanders, Louisiana, 9 years on death row. On September 26, 2014, a federal jury found Sanders guilty of kidnapping and killing a 12-year-old girl in Louisiana in 2010. The jury also sentenced Sanders to death. Earlier in Arizona, Sanders had also murdered the girl's mother. Sanders met Sue Ellen Roberts, 31, in the summer of 2010 when Roberts rented a storage unit at a Las Vegas warehouse where Sanders worked, according to evidence introduced during the trial. After Roberts and Sanders started dating, around 2 months later, Roberts decided to take Sanders to a wildlife park close to the Grand Canyon for Labor Day weekend, along with her 12-year-old daughter Lexis. After 3 days of travel, they were headed back to Nevada when Sanders pulled off Interstate 40 in a remote area of the Arizona desert, shot Sue Ellen Roberts in the head, and took Lexis Roberts hostage by forcing her into the car. Before shooting and killing Lexis Roberts in a forested area, Sanders traveled across the nation for many days. Evidence presented during the trial proved that Sanders had shot Lexis Roberts 4 times. He also slashed her throat and abandoned her body in the woods, where it was discovered on October 8, 2010 by a hunter. Following a national manhunt, Sanders was apprehended by FBI agents and the Harrison County Sheriff's deputy on November 14, 2010 at a truck stop in Gulfport, Mississippi. During the trial, Sanders' recorded confession was played for the jury, in which he acknowledged killing the mother and daughter. Kaboni Savage, Pennsylvania, 10 years on death row. On May 31, 2013, a Pennsylvania jury recommended that Savage be executed for each of the 12 killings he either directed or performed between 1988 and 2004. In addition, the jury recommended that Savage be executed for retaliating against witnesses, government witnesses, their relatives, and competitors in Savage's drug operation were the murder victims. On June 3, 2013, a federal judge formally handed down 13 death sentences. Rehon Taylor, Tennessee, 15 years on death row. On October 21, 2008, a Chattanooga, Tennessee jury found Taylor guilty of murder, kidnapping, and carjacking and recommended that he be executed. Guy Locke was an Atlanta, Georgia-based businessman who was the victim. After being transported across state lines, he was killed in Tennessee. Dzhokhar Tsarnaev, 8 years on death row. He was found guilty on 30 charges, including murder in connection with the 2013 Boston Marathon bombing. In the bombing, 3 people lost their lives, hundreds were injured, and a police officer lost his life trying to capture him. On May 15, 2015, the jury returned a death verdict for one of the bombing's victims. On June 24, 2015, a formal sentence took place. The trial court's inability to interrogate jurors about the specifics of the pretrial publicity they were exposed to led to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the First Circuit overturning Tsarnaev's death sentence on July 31, 2020. In a 6-3 decision, the U.S. Supreme Court overturned the decision of the appellate court. Alejandro Umana, North Carolina, 13 years on death row. A jury in Charlotte, North Carolina, on April 28, 2010, unanimously recommended Umana, who was allegedly a member of the MS-13 gang, receive the death penalty. In 2007, he was convicted of the murders of 2 Hispanic brothers at a Greensboro restaurant. In Charlotte, 26 alleged members of the MS-13 gang were indicted in 2008, including Umana. On July 27, 2010, Umana was formally given a death sentence. Jorge Torres, Virginia, 9 years on death row. On April 24, 2014, a Virginia jury recommended that this former Marine, who was found guilty of killing a fellow service member in 2009, be executed. It is believed that Torres killed other people in Illinois. He gave his lawyers the order not to present any mitigating material. The judge formally sentenced Torres to death on May 30, 2014. On August 28, 2017, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit upheld his conviction and the death penalty. Please hit that subscribe button if you like my channel. See you next time. Bye bye.